Chad, I love the fact that Sean Payton blasted the NFL's gambling policy in comments to the USA Today or through the USA Today. But betting on the NFL is pretty clear cut. I understand the complaints about everything else involved in sports gambling and whether or not players, anyone in the league, should be able to do that. It should be as simple as don't bet on the NFL or anything involved in the NFL, and that's it. But recently, with comments to USA Today, Sean Payton, who just had one of his players suspended for a full calendar year, and when this takes place, if you're caught betting on the league, you are not allowed at the team facility. You can't go to workouts, can't do anything involved with the organization. And in this case, with the Razaruki, his suspension is 12 months, and that means he's missing all of OTAs next year. He's missing anything at the very start of training camp, and he can't be a part of anything behind the scenes within the team facility. And that's ultimately where Sean Payton's frustration is. But his comments are piercing just because he's one of 32 head coaches. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard any other coach or seen any quotes that have been this blunt about the policy. We've heard from players, and certainly talking heads like us and others have complained or thought of better solutions that was thrown together for the millions and billions that the NFL will make in the partnership with what's going on with all of these apps, all of these companies, and of course the casinos in Vegas where a team now resides. But the quote, when you have a bunch of players getting Ds, you have to start looking at the message. And we've had a lot of Ds in our league this year with this policy. Shame on us whenever he was told that with his player's suspension, it's now double digits for players that have been caught doing this. Shame on us, Payton says. And we're going to send them home for a year where they can't be around. The idea that you just go away, shame on us. So he takes issue there. And then he was asked, well, what was your message whenever everything was clarified a couple of months ago to your team about the policy? Quote, you can't bet on NFL football ever, ever, ever. I don't give a bleep what it is. The other thing is, it's the same as the gun policy. You can't bet on nothing if you're at the facility, your hotel, your airplane. So wherever you can't carry a gun, you can't place a bet.
First time I've heard it described that way, that it's the same as where you can't carry a gun, you can't bet.
And then he points out the hypocrisy. He goes on. I know this. There's a handful of owners that are owning these quote-unquote problems. A player can't have a share of DraftKings or FanDuel. It's shameful, embarrassing. I don't know how the coaches and general managers have to be, on edge thinking about this. At least I would be, because it's all retroactive. So it doesn't matter if the player knew or did not know based on the leeway that the NFLPA gave the NFL to come up with this policy. They're still suspending you for a year. They're still suspending you for 6 games. And in many of the cases, the players have just copped to it and said, yeah, I did it. I didn't understand it, but I did it. The NFL doesn't care about that. They were also asked on a big conference call recently through the league. One of the league spokesperson said no. And that was the answer of if they're going to adjust the policy, they have no intention of doing that whatsoever because they're looking out for the integrity of the league. But, Chad, the only way this actually changes and it's adjusted is if you have one of the true superstars out for 12 months. And then you have owners look around going, man, if we don't have our top player, if we don't have our quarterback, who we do everything to protect because of a bet that was placed in 6 games, let's just not even mention the NFL, but he bets on a UFC pay-per-view. And he happened to do it in his car with a Wi-Fi hit on as he pulled in the parking lot. We're screwed. We have to adjust this and make it more common sense, bring that approach. But in this case, it's clear cut to me on NFL and where you can and can't do it. And Payton kind of lined that out. but he also, I understand where he's coming from on, you're told to, get out of here and you can't do workouts or anything in that regard around the team. And it's, more or less, you're losing that player. Because why you're, of course, going to release him because you want to replace him in camp, and you also, want to get production and develop a player over time. You can't do that here.
Well, as he said, shame on us. It is both the NFL who came up with the policy, but the NFLPA that agreed to it. So there's a little bit of blame to go around on both sides, but ultimately it's the NFL that wanted to enact this policy, and the other side had to agree to it. I mean, he's spot on right and everything. He said he even made the example of, I was sent away for a season with everything that happened with Bountygate and was told, don't communicate with your coaches. He said, like, I'm going to call them and tell them what, plays to call during the game. You're excommunicated at that point. So these players are exactly the same. They're gone. They're on an island. They're on their own at that point. That's not how you help anyone, and it's not helpful. I agree with pretty much everything Sean Payton had to say in this. I'm glad that he had the stones to say it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of clout to be able to say that, and he certainly got it. I wonder what the league's response will be privately to him if he gets a call from Roger Goodell that says, hey, you want to talk about this in private instead of going out and blasting it the way you did in this podcast?
I doubt they like each other very much, the same way Goodell and Brady, have butted heads over suspensions. Going back to Bountygate and all that. But, I mean, I understand the league's policy from the league's betting stance. Everything else, though, the 6 games is just way too much.
I agree.
For what it is and whether or not it's harmful to the integrity of the league itself.